Hi everyone, it's Wednesday. Hope you all are having a great week. And this week we will be finishing up, I know you're very excited to know that, our hallmarks of aging. I know it's been a little tedious, but there is reason behind all of this because once we get through all this, we will then be able to utilize these particular hallmarks and address these specifically in ways that include nutrition and supplements and lifestyle changes, things like that, that will help us in terms of aging well. But you know, the idea behind this is not so much to diagnose things early. It's really prevention. This is preventative medicine, longevity medicine at its finest, in understanding the underlying pathways and the things that happen. So let's jump right on in and get these last two little hallmarks down. This last couple ones have to do with what are called the integrative hallmarks, and these have to do with how we are in terms of our own personal genetics and how they affect us within our environment. So the last two are stem cell exhaustion and altered intercellular communication. Now I'll kind of walk through those for you. So stem cells, I know many of you understand a little bit about what that is, but stem cells basically are cells in the body that can go to areas of damage and do repair work, so that a stem cell could either be a repair of a liver cell, it could be the repair of a muscle cell, perhaps a heart muscle cell. So they have the potential to become any type of cell where there is need to repair and replenish, so to speak. But what we first see as we age is a decline in these types of stem cells, and there's four main areas. There's the hemopoietic, meaning those that are in our bone marrow that regenerate all the time, our red blood cells, our white blood cells, our platelets, etc. But as we age, begin to see more problems with anemia. We see problems with what we call myelodysplasias. That's a big fancy term for abnormal cells that are made in the bone marrow. We just don't have enough great surveillance to prevent abnormal cells from growing and then being distributed within the body. As we're younger, we have a very good surveillance system with our immune system, but as we age, these areas become more of an issue. And so we hear about lymphomas and leukemias and chronic lymphocytic, chronic myelocytic type of leukemias, lymphomas, etc. So this is kind of that area. So these are the hemopoietic or the blood-borne cell issues. Then we also have muscle cell issues, which can be problematic. These have to do with not only our muscles, but also bone. And so osteoporosis becomes an issue as we have more cells that take away calcium and structure of the bone versus laying it down. And certainly those of you on a hormone program understand that estrogen helps to slow down the reabsorption, and testosterone and progesterone actually help to build healthy, normal bone. And exercise and estrogen are absolutely the best things for bone health. And so certainly being on a hormone program is one of the ways to try to address that. Then we also have cells that have to do with repair of intestinal cells. You know, these are rapidly turning over cells, and those stem cells help keep our gut in good shape. Again, with aging, though, these can be problematic, and we just definitely see exhaustion of the system, so to speak, because of persistent environmental stressors and internal stressors with either lifestyle choices or overuse, etc. Certainly eating foods that are inflammatory can be detrimental to gut turnover and the health of the gut as well. So stem cell exhaustion. And then lastly, we have the sort of altered intercellular communication. One of the things that's really important with overall health and wellness is that there are the signaling molecules and the inflammatory cascade that can occur when there is a lot of inflammation in the body, this disrupts just the normal flow of information between cells. You can do this through the endocrine system or the hormonal system, through the neurologic system, because we have neurotransmitters that are cellular communication, part of cellular communication, particularly obviously in the brain, and then also in our distal organs and limbs, just in terms of just getting things moving and being able to have both the somatic system and what we call the parasympathetic or the autonomic system working well, so that we have adequate heart rate and breathing, but we also can move our muscles. So a lot of signaling there in the neurologic system. But with aging, we see this sort of this smoldering type of inflammation that can occur, and this sets up many cascades. We've heard a lot about cytokines and different types of molecules that are inflammatory to the body that can either increase things like clotting or just inhibit cells from functioning well. And it's this dysfunctional immune system that then allows different things to come into the body and affect the body. Particularly as we age, we see more infections, particularly pneumonias and bladder infections. And with significant aging, these can be remarkably potent and quite much, can be really destroying health and wellness, and can even lead to death for people. So these types of things can be problematic and part of this aging process. And so now that we've kind of walked through all of the different forms of issues with these hallmarks of aging, we've covered the primary hallmarks, which is the genetic instability, telomere attrition, epigenetic alterations, and loss of proteostasis. Those are the primary hallmarks, which really are all very negative. And then we have these antagonistic hallmarks, or what we call the responses to the damage, which initially, when they occur, generally are not necessarily negative, but actually can be positive. It's just that when they're in overdrive, they become negative. And these are those areas that we discussed last week: the dysregulated nutrient sensing, the mitochondrial dysfunction, and cellular senescence. And in many situations, these can be positive, but as I said, when we get them in overdrive or there's too much inflammation around, they can be quite negative. And then lastly, these last integrative hallmarks, the stem cell exhaustion and the altered intercellular communication. Now, the reason that I wanted to spend this time, like I said earlier, on these things is that we want to take our time and really go through, and as we address not only supplements, but lifestyle choices and different things that can come down the pike as I continue to study this, we are going to be able then to really look into specific areas that these touch upon. And there are certain supplements that have more impact on nutrient sensing or stem cell exhaustion versus the genetic instability or epigenetic alterations. But each one of these are going to have impact. We know, for instance, resveratrol has a great deal of impact on sirtuins, which then have impact on the ability of slowing aging through sirtuin pathways. So there's pathways in our body that can be overly active, but the idea is that we slow down this process, and rather than aging day by day by day, maybe we age half a day. And that's really what we're looking to. We're not necessarily seeing data that suggests that we can turn back the clock, but we can certainly slow it down. And so I'm hopeful over the next few weeks, as we continue to walk through certain aspects of really diving in and drilling into those things that we can do. We'll talk about certain supplements. We'll talk about certain choices in lifestyle. And there are certainly new things coming down the pike. I've been reading Tony Robbins' new book, Life Force, and boy, the genetic things that are being done now are just almost hard to believe, honestly. But they are taking pieces of DNA and changing lives, and it's just kind of fantastical, if you will. Anyway, I hope you all have a great week. I know this has been a little tedious these last few weeks, but I appreciate your sort of hanging in there, because there is a method to this madness and a method to having to go down a lot of these nerdy pathways. And hopefully as we really walk through these next few weeks too, as things come about, I'm going to try to really associate those things with these aspects of aging that we've talked about. You guys have a great week, and we'll talk again next week.